Welcome to the tactical preview of City versus Napoli. It's City's first game in the Champions League this season, and as always in this series, what I try to do is outline City's opponent, try to predict how City will set up, try to create a team which can best deal with the opponent's strengths and weaknesses. Let's get straight into it, shall we? This is how both sides set up in their most recent games. City for the Manchester derby, Napoli most recently against Fiorentina. It is worth noting, however, that this midfield five, it is a 4-1-4-1. They actually play the same off-ball shape as City have a lot so far this season. In this 1-4 in the midfield, that midfield five has played every single Serie A game so far this season. So expect these five to feature again. Probably the same with Haaland, given that Lukaku is injured. Wouldn't be surprised if the centre-backs rotated. Would be very surprised if the full-backs rotated. However, it's also worth noting, and we'll get on to City's next opponent, it's also worth noting that Napoli's game after this one is on Monday, and it's at home against a side, I believe it's Pisa, basically a side that you would expect Napoli to absolutely smash. So there's no reason why Napoli can't go full strength for this encounter. City maybe do not have that luxury. We'll get into that. The main danger area for Napoli so far this season, based on my viewing of them, has been this little triangle here with Spinazzola, the left-back, McTominay, Serie A's MVP last season, playing a left wing, interestingly. We'll get into whether it is actually left wing. And of course, a little baby Belgian player who you may have heard of, Kevin De Bruyne, of course, making his return to the Etihad. Now, even though McTominay is the nominal left winger, what actually happens a lot for Napoli is you'll see like this sort of structure. I can't bother moving the rest of the players. Bear with me. So sometimes it will be, the left back simply holding width, but quite often what does happen is that Kevin De Bruyne will be that player to pull out wide. And we have actually seen him do that for City a fair bit. If you rewind back to the first game of last season, for example, for City against Chelsea, Stamford Bridge, Doku was technically at left wing, but what was really happening was that quite often De Bruyne was peeling out to that left side, playing as a left back / left winger that allowed Doku to drift inside. That's ultimately how City won the game. And there's a similar sort of vibe and pattern that's been happening with Napoli, where McTominay will start from the left, but whether it's Spinazzola allowing him to go into the centre, or indeed Kevin De Bruyne, you are not losing McTominay's central box crashing, even though he's technically starting out at left wing. So expect lots of rotations between those three. Expect the central through balls from Spinazzola and also crossing from that left side. And from Kevin De Bruyne, if they get into a settled possession state, don't be surprised to see him dropping back sometimes as far as the defence. And again, this is something that we saw for City in his final season, that sort of quarterback role. We know that he doesn't have, City fans know more than anyone, we know that De Bruyne doesn't necessarily have the physicality to be that all-action midfielder that he used to be for however many years. Nowadays, the physicality isn't quite there, neither is the athleticism. But the passing ability and technical traits are still absolutely there. So do not be surprised if Kevin De Bruyne picks up a deeper central position and he looks for the runners of the wide players and of course Haaland as well. This, for me, is the main area of concern for City. Just between these three players, and we're only 3 games into the season, but they have combined for 40% of Napoli's goals in Serie A so far this season. They are definitely a side who prefer to attack down that left side, and I'm not having a go at the right side, of course, but when you compare the right side to the left side, it's basically night and day, of course. Their best player from last season is here. Our best player in club's history is here, and Spinazzola is a fantastic attacking left back. So expect this to be the key danger area for Napoli. Now, how can that inform City's team building for the encounter? Well, logic would suggest that if Napoli's key players and their best threat is coming down their left, that means that we therefore need to ensure that the right side is as stable and secure as is humanly possible. Now, in an ideal world, this is what I would do. Rather, this is what I would predict City to do. I'd probably go with Rodri and Nico in the midfield, whether as a 2 or more likely, because this is how City have been playing, in this 4-3-3 / more like a 4-1-4-1, depending on the opponent. The problem, however, is, And I think the problem with this series is that up until now, it's been relatively straightforward. I've just picked like the side that I think Pep will put out, that I believe he believes is the best side. But we now have to view this through the context of City's next opponent, which is going to be on Sunday. This match is on a Thursday. So there's only 2 games of rest in between the matches. And it's up against a very challenging opponent in Arsenal, and it's away from home. So I do think we have to bear that in mind as well. I don't think it would be wise to simply predict Pep to start all of his best team, because there's surely got to be an eye on the Sunday game. That is not the same as saying that we have to make wholesale changes, but I think for some players that does have to be the case. And I think one of those players is going to have to be Rodri. Does it make sense for him to start on Sunday, start on Thursday, start on Sunday, coming after, obviously like a season out with his ACL issues? He struggled against United in the derby. I don't know if we can justify starting him. So I'd probably have him on the bench based on that Arsenal factor. By definition, that means Nico has to come in to play his position. I don't want to do this, but I think I've also got to apply that same logic to Foden. That full 90 that he completed against United on Sunday, that was the first full 90 he's completed for City since February against Liverpool, I believe. And he's a player just coming back from injury as well. I don't know if we can start both of them Sunday, Thursday, Sunday, given that injury situation. And I'm going to apply that same logic to Guardiola as well. Once again, I don't want to do that, but I think that we have to be semi-realistic here. We need Guardiola, Foden, Rodri to all start against Arsenal. They have to. There is no debate about that. I don't know if you can get away with starting them against Napoli, and that's a shame. But that's going to be my thought process. So, what state are we in now? And let's go from back to front, and then we'll address that right side based on Napoli's left. Donnarumma will be starting because he literally did the press conference with Guardiola. So there's no doubt in my mind that Donnarumma is starting. We are limited on left backs because there's still no Ait-Nouri, even though I've put him on the bench here, like he's still injured. If I'm saying that Guardiola can't start, then obviously he can't play at left back. So that means that O'Reilly becomes the de facto left back. There is literally no other option there. Same with Nico as well. I don't like any of our right back options. And you guys know my thoughts on Kusanov at right back. However, I am warming to the idea of him maybe playing. This isn't really relevant to the Napoli game, but in general, I'm warming to the idea of him playing at right back in games where it's against a lesser opponent, or in the context of Napoli, against an opponent where they don't really play a left winger who's actually going to give him too much trouble off ball. Does that make sense? Because Napoli don't really play a proper left winger. As I've outlined before, it's almost definitely going to be McTominay technically being a left winger, or De Bruyne, or their left back. He's not really dealing with a Matoma or an Eze type in that sort of state. He's actually dealing with, certainly if it's McTominay, he's dealing with a far more physical athlete of a player rather than a tricky winger. So I actually think that maybe this is going to be one of the only times where I'm really happy with the concept of Kusanov starting at right back based on that. And maybe I'll be happy with him starting basically every game because I don't like either of our right back options, any of the right back options, but there we go. So I am actually going to say Kusanov to start as well. Stones is back in training for the Napoli game. Is it too early for him? Almost definitely. So I'm going to say that another left-footed centre-back comes in, so Ake will play instead. So that's my predicted back four. You can probably guess that I'm going to also predict Pep to play the same shape as against United, a 3-2 rather than a 2-3. That's largely informed by the fact that Ait-Nouri is injured. So I do think that's what City will be doing. So therefore the on-ball, in fact, no, I won't worry about on-ball until we get through to the other players. Nico has to play. I think Haaland will start. There's no doubt in my mind there. This is the trickiest area now to deal with because I can't pick Rodri and I can't pick Foden based on the parameters I've given myself. I could play Reinders. I could play Seth Lewis. I can't play Shirky. I could play Bernardo. This is on the fly, by the way. I've not really thought about this. I'm just sort of going for it. I think this is what I was going to say. I was going to suggest that maybe we can rest Reinders because he started every single game so far this season. And maybe you could play like Lewis there, because even though he's not particularly fantastic 1v1 defensively, and I've just illustrated earlier, we need this to be relatively solid, he is still a very tenacious presser. So maybe this could be the midfield, or like that sort of situation. I'm just going to say, however, that let's just go back to the midfield that worked against Wolves with a slight twist. Let's swap Bernardo and Reinders round. So instead of it being Reinders who has to deal with this triangle here, it can actually be a combination of Kusanov, Bernardo, and then whoever the right winger is going to be. Because whatever we may think of Bernardo, he is a player who will always give his all in respect of effort and pressing and endeavour, and that combined with Kusanov's aggression and lack of a second gear, it seems, anything other than a top gear, I think this could be a decent matchup against that dangerous Napoli left side. I'm just trying to think of best midfield or sides that can be put out, based on pressing physicality as well, and also the limited options that we have. I'll repeat, I'd like it to be Nico and Rodri. Can we justify that? I'm not so sure. On that note, Bob gets to start as well. Now, if Savio had more than 5 minutes under his belt, I'd be tempted to start Savio in this game. But I think that Bob didn't start at the derby. He's been so fantastic so far this season overall. And he's also, just going back to that pressing situation, he's also one of the best pressers in the entire squad. So this, to deal with Napoli's 3, I think is arguably one of the best options for City. You've got a tenacious pressing winger. You've got a midfielder who maybe can't offer as much as you want on ball, but he will certainly offer running off it. And you've got Kusanov, who is clearly our most physical and strong and fast option, and someone who will hopefully be able to match up McTominay from a physical standpoint as well. I'm quite comfortable with that, given all the other issues of context with the Arsenal game. So I'm not going to start Lewis here, even though I think there is a world where Lewis could start here, but I'm just not going to predict it. And am I going to start Doku, or am I going to give Savio a run out, actually? You know what? Yeah. Why not? Why not? Let's do that. So this now turns into, because I think Doku needs to start against Arsenal again. So there's a lot of rotation here. I've just realised, have I rotated too much based on what Pep would do? Same goalkeeper, same right back, same centre back, same left back, different. So the defence is largely unchanged, in fairness. So there's barely any rotation there. The midfield is entirely different. Because even though Reinders is here, he's on the left rather than the right. Perhaps that's too much rotation. I'm not sure. I'm quite comfortable with that amount of rotation in the forward line. I'm sort of second guessing myself a little bit here, but I'm gonna stick with my guns. So on ball, we're gonna have a 3-2. So it's going to be Nico at the base, supported by O'Reilly, Bernardo either side, Bob and Savio are your wingers, and then Reinders gets to go back into his more advanced role that he did so well against Wolves with. Rather than deeper, where he's been struggling a little bit. If we do play like this, that less defensive onus is on Reinders. He might be tired. I don't know. He's obviously started every single game, and I would like it to start him on Sunday against Arsenal as well. So maybe it's a bit of an ask, but maybe because he's playing a bit more advanced here in Nobbins' prediction world, bit less physical emphasis on him, perhaps, and hopefully he would be able to have a decent game bouncing off Haaland as well. So that's what I have predicted City to do. It's going to be a 3-4-3. It can sometimes be a 3-2, but I think in the main it will be that. This will allow us to outnumber Napoli's midfield as well. We know that De Bruyne off-ball is not the player that he once was, so maybe that's like an area that City can potentially target. With Reinders making runs off him, that could absolutely be a thing. I'll say again, the key concern for me is going to be when Napoli are in a relatively settled possession state, and given my concerns over City's off-ball work, are these three just going to be able to run right over our right side? That's one to keep an eye out on for sure. But that's my prediction. I'm going to predict City to win, because of course I am. I'm going to say they'll win 1-0. It'll be a low-scoring affair, but let me know what your score prediction is in the chat below. Let me know if you have enjoyed today's tactical preview. What do you think are going to be the main storylines from the match? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.